The emergency room doors burst open as paramedics rush inside. A man lies on the stretcher, unconscious, his face pale and lifeless. His breathing is shallow, his pulse weak. Nurses and doctors move quickly, their voices overlapping as they assess his condition. Every second counts. The lead physician on duty steps forward. He is a black doctor, well known for his expertise and calm under pressure. He doesn't hesitate. His focus is locked on the patient as he calls out orders. "We need oxygen now! Get an IV started!" The team moves efficiently, responding to his commands without question. The room is tense, machines beep urgently. The staff works in perfect rhythm, each movement precise. Blood pressure dropping, heart rate unstable. The doctor leans in, checking the man's vitals. His expression remains steady, but the situation is serious. As the team works, more details about the patient emerge. He's an older man, well known in the local community. Some recognize his face immediately. There's a quiet murmur among the nurses, a glance exchanged between two interns. They know who he is. They know his reputation. Whispers travel through the room. "That's him?" Someone mutters. Another nods, eyes flickering toward the doctor. They wonder if he knows, if he recognizes the man on the table. But the doctor doesn't react. He's not thinking about the past. He's not thinking about the patient's beliefs or reputation. Right now, there's only one thing on his mind: saving this man's life. "Prepare for emergency surgery," he says firmly. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just a doctor doing his job. The man lying on the hospital bed is not just any patient. His name is Henry Carter, a longtime resident of the town. People know him. Some respect him, others avoid him. He has lived here for decades, building a reputation that is hard to ignore. Henry is old-fashioned in every sense of the word. He believes in tradition, in a world that once was, and in the way things should be. But there's something else he's known for: his open disdain for people who don't look like him. Over the years, Henry has never hidden his views. He's the kind of man who speaks his mind, no matter how offensive. He's the kind of man who makes people uncomfortable but doesn't care. At the local diner, waitresses whisper when he walks in. He always asks for a table far from certain customers. He refuses to be served by black employees, making his preferences clear with a glare or a sharp comment. At community meetings, his voice is often the loudest. Complaints about changing times, about new people moving in, about how things were better before. He doesn't just think it, he says it, and he says it often. Even in his personal life, his views are no secret. His family has seen it firsthand. His son, tired of the constant hateful remarks, moved away years ago. His daughter, though quieter, has begged him to change. "Dad, it's not like that anymore," she's told him. But Henry never listens. In his mind, he's right. His past encounters with black individuals have always been tense. A neighbor once tried to befriend him, offering a simple wave from across the street. Henry ignored him. When a black plumber arrived to fix his sink, Henry barely spoke, watching the man with suspicion. People in town have learned to avoid confrontation with him. Some say it's not worth it. Others think he's just set in his ways. Either way, Henry Carter is not someone you'd expect to show kindness to a person of color. And now, here he is, fighting for his life. His condition is severe, his heart is weak, and his body is failing him. The hospital staff works frantically, trying to stabilize him. Time is slipping away, and every second matters. None of that concerns Henry right now. He is unconscious, unaware of what's happening around him. He doesn't know that the man working to save his life is someone he would have ignored, or even looked down on, just days ago. The irony is lost on him. For now, his survival rests in the hands of the very kind of person he has spent his whole life judging. Dr. Marcus Bennett has spent years earning his place in the medical field. He didn't just wake up one day and become a respected physician. He fought for it. Long nights in medical school, years of training, and endless sacrifices brought him to where he is today. He is known for his skill and dedication. Colleagues admire him. Patients trust him. When he walks into a room, people listen. His calm, steady presence brings confidence to those around him, even in the most chaotic situations. But Dr. Bennett's journey has not been easy. From the moment he stepped into the world of medicine, he felt the weight of being different. The looks, the assumptions, the subtle doubts from some patients who questioned his abilities before he even spoke. He has heard it all. "Are you really the doctor? I'd rather see someone else." Some patients refused his care, even when he was the most qualified person in the room. Some colleagues underestimated him, assuming he was a nurse or an assistant instead of a trained surgeon. Even in medical school, he had professors who overlooked him, students who didn't take him seriously. But Dr. Bennett never let it stop him. He chose to rise above it, not out of weakness, but out of strength. He refused to let anger control him. His purpose was bigger than proving people wrong. He wanted to save lives, no matter whose. To him, medicine is about duty, about helping people no matter their background, no matter their beliefs. He doesn't have the luxury of picking and choosing who he saves. His colleagues respect that about him. Some even admire him for it. Many doctors struggle to separate their emotions from their work, but not Dr. Bennett. He doesn't take insults personally. He doesn't let past experiences cloud his judgment. Right now, as he stands over Henry Carter, none of the past matters. Not the words, not the prejudice, not the history. The only thing that matters is saving a life. Because that's what he was trained to do. The heart monitor beeps erratically. The patient's vitals are dropping fast. The team moves in a blur, their voices sharp and urgent. "He's crashing!" a nurse shouts. Dr. Marcus Bennett doesn't hesitate. His years of experience take over. He steps forward, his voice steady, his mind clear. "We need to get him to the operating room now," he says firmly. The nurses rush to prepare, wheeling the unconscious man through the hallways. The situation is critical. Henry Carter's heart is failing. His body is weak. If they don't act now, there won't be a second chance. Dr. Bennett stays by his side, checking his pulse, monitoring his breathing. None of this is new to him. He has handled emergencies like this before. But there's something different about this one. The whispers from earlier still linger in the air. The nurses, the interns, even some of the doctors. They all know who Henry Carter is. They know his history. They know what he stands for. And they know that Dr. Bennett knows too. But none of that matters right now. Inside the operating room, the atmosphere is tense. The team moves quickly, preparing for surgery. Lights shine brightly overhead. The sound of gloves snapping, instruments clinking, machines humming. It's all part of the routine. Dr. Bennett washes his hands, puts on his surgical gown, and takes his place at the table. He looks down at the patient, the same man who would have likely refused his help under different circumstances. For a brief moment, there's silence. Then, his voice cuts through the air. "Scalpel." The surgery begins. For hours, the team works tirelessly. Dr. Bennett leads with precision, making each incision with steady hands. His mind doesn't drift. He doesn't think about the things Henry has said, the people he has hurt, the beliefs he holds. There is only the task at hand, blood pressure stabilizing, heart rate returning to normal. The worst is over, but they're not done yet. Every move matters. Every second counts. One of the nurses glances at Dr. Bennett. She has worked with him for years. She knows he's a professional, but even she wonders, how does he do it? How does he set everything aside and focus only on the job? Dr. Bennett doesn't waver. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the surgery is complete. The machines beep at a steady pace. The patient's condition is no longer critical. He has made it through. Dr. Bennett takes a step back, pulling off his gloves. He exhales slowly, not in relief, but in satisfaction. He did what he came to do. The team begins the next steps, closing up, preparing to move the patient to recovery. There is no celebration, no applause, just quiet efficiency. As Henry Carter is wheeled out of the operating room, he is still unconscious. He has no idea what just happened. He doesn't know that the man he has spent his life looking down on is the same man who just saved it. But soon he will. A slow beep fills the room. Steady, rhythmic. The sound of a heart monitor. Henry Carter's eyelids twitch. His breathing is shallow but controlled. His fingers move slightly against the crisp hospital sheets. Then, with great effort, he opens his eyes. Blurry lights, white ceiling, the faint hum of machines. He blinks, his vision adjusting to the sterile surroundings. His body feels heavy, weighed down by exhaustion and medication. He tries to move but immediately stops. A sharp ache runs through his chest. He groans softly. The sound draws attention. Footsteps approach. A figure steps into view, dressed in a white coat, clipboard in hand. Henry's eyes flicker toward the man standing near his bed. He's tall, composed with an air of authority. The doctor looks at him, his expression unreadable but professional. "Mr. Carter," the doctor says calmly, "you're awake." Henry swallows, his throat dry. He tries to speak, but nothing comes out. His lips part slightly, but no words form. His body is too weak, his mind too foggy. The doctor seems to understand. He reaches for a small cup of water from the tray and hands it to him. "Take it slow," he says. Henry takes the cup with trembling fingers, drinking carefully. The cool liquid soothes his throat, but it does nothing to clear the confusion in his mind. His brows furrow. He looks around, piecing together where he is. The machines, the IV in his arm, the crisp sheets, a hospital. Then the realization hits him. He survived. His breath hitches. His heart beats faster. He doesn't remember much, but he knows one thing. He was dying. He was slipping away. And yet, here he is, alive. His gaze returns to the doctor. He studies the man for the first time, really looking at him. Something about him feels different. His mind is still hazy, but a question forms in the back of his head. The doctor speaks again, his tone even and composed. "You suffered a major cardiac event," he explains. "It was critical. We had to perform emergency surgery. You're stable now, but you'll need time to recover." Henry listens, but his mind is elsewhere. He feels the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The doctor's voice is steady, but Henry hears something beneath it. Patience, control, a lack of emotion. A strange feeling creeps into Henry's chest, something unfamiliar, something uncomfortable. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to learn the truth. Henry Carter's strength slowly returns. His body is weak, but his mind is sharpening. The fog is lifting. He shifts slightly in bed, wincing at the soreness in his chest. His hands feel lighter, no IV, no tubes. He glances down at his arms, bruised from needles, evidence of a fight he barely remembers, a fight he somehow won. He exhales deeply. His voice is hoarse when he finally speaks. How bad was it?" The black doctor, Dr. Marcus Bennett, stands at the foot of the bed. Calm, professional, unshaken. "It was critical," he replies. "You went into cardiac arrest. We had to perform emergency surgery to save your life." Henry listens, his brow furrowing. He doesn't remember the surgery, just flashes, the pain, the sirens, then nothing. He clears his throat, struggling to find the right words. Who did the surgery?" The doctor meets his eyes. There's a pause. Not hesitation, just a brief, controlled silence. Then, he answers. "I did." The room goes still. Henry blinks. His expression shifts, subtle at first, then more visible. Confusion, discomfort, a flicker of something unreadable in his pale blue eyes. He stares at Dr. Bennett as if seeing him for the first time. The weight of the words settles in. The man who saved his life. The surgeon who held his heart in his hands. The one who pulled him back from the edge. A black man. His jaw tightens slightly. His fingers twitch against the blanket. His mind races, searching for a response. Silence stretches between them. Henry's daughter, Lisa, sits beside him, her eyes darting between the two men. She knows her father. She knows what he believes, what he said before. She also knows he wouldn't be breathing if not for Dr. Bennett. His son, Mark, leans against the wall, arms crossed, watching closely. Waiting. The hospital staff nearby exchange quick glances. The tension is thick. Henry finally speaks. His voice is low, slightly strained. "You did?" Dr. Bennett nods. "Yes." Henry exhales through his nose, his face unreadable. He doesn't say thank you. He doesn't say anything at all. The weight of the moment is pressing in. Everyone is waiting. The room remains silent. The air is thick with tension. Henry Carter stares at Dr. Bennett, his expression unreadable. His mind is working, processing, struggling. This man, this black doctor, saved his life. The truth sits heavy in his chest, almost suffocating. It doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. For years he believed people like Dr. Bennett were different, lesser. And yet here he is, breathing because of him. His fingers curl slightly against the sheets. His heart beats faster, not from fear, not from anger, but something else. Something unfamiliar. His daughter Lisa watches him carefully. Her hands are clasped in her lap, her shoulders tense. She knows her father. She knows his history. And she knows that right now he's at war with himself. Mark, his son, remains against the wall, arms still crossed. He doesn't speak, but his expression says enough. "What are you going to do, Dad?" Henry swallows. He wants to say something, but the words don't come easily. He should be grateful. Any other man would be, but gratitude requires acknowledgement. Acknowledging that the person he's looked down on is the same person who just saved him. His throat tightens. The conflict is clear on his face. Dr. Bennett remains calm, his expression unreadable. He has seen this before. Patients who hesitate to accept the truth. Patients who choke on their own pride. Henry exhales sharply. His frustration builds, not at the doctor, but at himself. He hates feeling weak. He hates feeling indebted, and he hates the thought that maybe, just maybe, he's been wrong all these years. He wants to deny it. To reject the idea that he needed this man, to tell himself that any doctor would have done the same. But deep down he knows better. This man didn't just do his job. He did it despite knowing who Henry was. Despite everything Henry had stood for. Lisa finally breaks the silence. "Dad," she says softly, "Dr. Bennett saved your life." Henry doesn't look at her. His jaw tightens. His hands clench. His entire body is tense. Mark raises an eyebrow, waiting, expecting. Everyone in the room is waiting, waiting to see if Henry Carter will let go of the hatred he's carried for so long, or if he'll hold on to it, even now. The silence stretches. It's unbearable. Henry Carter exhales, long and slow. His fingers grip the blanket as if grounding himself. His heart pounds, not from fear, not from anger, but something he can't quite name. He lifts his gaze to Dr. Bennett, the man standing before him. The man who saved him. The man he never would have chosen. His throat is dry, and when he finally speaks, his voice is unsteady. You did the surgery?" Dr. Bennett's face remains calm. "Yes." Henry swallows. His chest rises and falls in uneven breaths. His pride is heavy, weighing him down, but something else is pressing against it. Something unfamiliar, something uncomfortable. His lips part again. The words feel foreign, awkward, forced, but they come anyway. "Guess I owe you one." The room stills. Lisa's breath catches. Mark's arms uncross. A nurse glances at Dr. Bennett, waiting for his reaction. No one expected that. Not exactly gratitude, not exactly an apology, but something. Dr. Bennett doesn't flinch. He nods, his expression unreadable. "Just doing my job." Henry holds his gaze for a moment longer. His eyes flicker, not quite softened, but not as hard as before. Something shifts deep inside. It's not dramatic. It's not immediate. but it's there. For the first time in his life, Henry Carter is forced to see a man for who he is, not for the color of his skin. And for the first time, he doesn't look away.